man, we ready.
Just wanted to burn this up real quick. Burn some sage. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Burn the Wagon. I'm here with Thairie, and we're here to verbally burn the wagon that is patriarchy, colonialism, and capitalism. So thank you guys for joining me for another episode. Today I'm burning some sage for our sister that was stolen from us too soon, named Nicole Smith. Today was the day that she was killed on the Manchester Point Arena Reservation, and she has still not gotten justice, and her family wishes that she get justice. So please look up her story. Her name is Nicole Smith. She was murdered today, November 19th. 2018, I believe. So if you could please go listen to her story and say her name, and please have her family in your thoughts today. So I'm going to take it over to Thairie. He has everything planned for today on our discussions, and thank you guys for listening. Thank you.
Yeah, man, thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Say her name. Man.
Yeah.
I definitely appreciate you doing that and sharing that. Definitely appreciate that. And I think for me, I mean, it definitely it's been a crazy, I'll probably say 24 hours, to say the least. I think just socially, just watching everything go down on the time feed, or just watch everything go down in the news, just seeing from one end the Julius Jones case, which happened in Oklahoma, where he was thankfully pardoned from the death row penalty. Initially pretty much at the 11th hour by the governor in Oklahoma, and then in that same token, we fast forward to just a few hours ago today, seeing the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict. So it's definitely a whirlwind of emotions. It's from, I think, in a kind of just, it's really a reflection of the criminal justice system. I think from just me analyzing it from the last 2 days, I think people are just emotionally, I feel just went from a high of seeing someone that's innocent, get the justice of not being, executed, and getting their, finally another due process of their time in court, and hopefully being further exonerated. And in that same light, you flip it on the opposite coin, you see someone who, in my opinion, kind of caused all this drama in the first place, off yet another tragedy. I think people, often forget about the Jacob Blake situation.
Yes,
I think a lot of people, are really, caught up with the case that's going on right now, and I think people really forget what started all this in the first place, which was Jacob Blake, and it's definitely a crazy thing to think about, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think when you heard the news.
So let's start off with the Julius Jones case. Yeah. So he's a man from Oklahoma, I believe, who is on death row for being convicted of killing a man in his driveway. But his family pleads that he's innocent and was at home at the time. And like you said, his death was put on until the last, 3 hours, until he had 3 hours until he was going to be...
Yeah, he was supposed to be. Unfortunately, he was scheduled to be executed at 4 p.m. Pretty much. I think believe that time zone in Oklahoma, and so I think pretty much 3 hours essentially before he was executed, the governor made that call.
It's why do you wait 3 hours until, that's somebody's life.
And I think with that, I think his reasoning or behind that was talking to the victim's family of the initial gentleman who was killed in this murder trial, unfortunately, in the first place, and really talking to them and getting their reasoning, and then also having a sense of prayer over it. But I think, like you just said, the family of the gentleman that was scheduled to be on death row, Julius Jones, I kind of felt for that family really going through a whirlwind of emotions of feeling the sense of hope, at the same time feeling the sense of trepidation, feeling the sense of seeing that someone that you love, at this point falsely accused is now, thankfully him being off the death row pretty much proved that, kind of showing new like evidence of him, like you're alluding to, him not being at the scene of the crime, having have an alibi, finally speak up and speak out about what happened, or having his chance to have alibi speak out, and also just man, I think in that sense of it's just hard. Yeah, man, I think definitely with everything going on, I think definitely. Yeah, man, it's definitely tough. It's definitely tough today, honestly.
There's 3 major cases going on right now.
Yeah.
And it's a lot to take in. The Rittenhouse, the Julius Jones, and then the Ahmaud Arbery case.
Yeah.
Those all 3 going on at the same time is heavy, and like you said, it's hard to process words to think about it, and because it's very discouraging to see our system fail us, and at the same time wanting us to trust in it, and wanting us to have trust in these cops and have trust in this system. And it's hard because how do we change? How do we look forward to a future with this system? Like how do we want to go forward? Like it's so hard to process words as a person of color with all this going on, because that could easily be any of us. And I just forget about the whole case that's going on, the reasoning behind why they were protesting in Kenosha. Like you said, people kind of forget that Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back in front of his kids. So,
and initially, even with that trial, the police officer involved in that case, I think pretty much a month or 2 before, the courts decided not to pursue, further charges on him for even causing the shooting in the first place. So, I think even with that, it definitely was just disheartening kind of seeing everything go down. And then, on the same token, I am happy for, Julius Jones, rightfully, getting his due process, and mostly just after, hearing the exonerations, hearing more evidence of him being proven innocent, also hearing more testimony from the person that did commit the shooting, commit the unfortunate tragedy. I think definitely with new evidence is really helping. I think it's the unfortunate thing too when we look at our criminal justice system is a lot of the reflection of, black and white, which is really, a tough taboo to talk about, also a tireless conversation to really have. But I think it's really important when we bring up the history, even like the Julius Jones of him. That's a systemic and systematic problem of many people of color that go through the criminal justice system, in my view, of always not hearing your side of the story, always being mostly stigmatized and criminalized first, before you get your due process. On the flip side of that, you see Kyle Rittenhouse and really hearing a lot of the benefit of the doubt conversations, also hearing a lot of not him being stigmatized right away by a lot of media outlets. Mostly even that issue within that is also frustrating for a lot of organizers and activists. Also just, common folks in general, just seeing the whole case go down of that. This was a 17-year-old, and even on my time feed, it was the side-by-side, picture of Kyle Rittenhouse and Trayvon Martin, how, in that same time, he was 17-year-old as well too, but immediately by cross news outlets, for a trial that involved him, he was immediately stigmatized, criminalized, and really not given the benefit of the doubt of really not avoiding that, tragic situation of what happened to him, and mostly just being more stigmatic towards him and not giving him his due process the way they gave Rittenhouse his due process. So definitely it was really a reflection of really deep lens reflection within the criminal justice system.
And me and my friend were having a conversation the other day, and she said that why is it that when it's a white kid, it's this, we can't destroy his future and put him through this situation, just like the Brock Turner situation. It's the same thing that they're doing with Kyle Rittenhouse. They want to not tarnish his future. But why can't we do that with people of color? Why can't we do that with, like you're saying, why do they just look at Trayvon Martin and put him in this category of a certain person? And yeah, why can't it just be everybody? Why can't we think about everybody's future in situations?
Yeah, and I think it kind of speaks to what you brought up earlier when it comes to decolonizing. I think that's just that mindset, that mind frame of what is even deemed in our codes and history books is mostly deemed of the white European male was deemed more right, more as deemed as the more heroic character, and even in economic meaning just more in that sense, if you feel where I'm coming from. And so I think that's systemically unfortunately is carried on through many aspects of our society, even the criminal justice system, like the way the laws are written, the codes are written, even the conversation along the other day we talked about black codes and how post slavery a lot of laws were written to heighten the mass incarceration of black folks who were just freed from being enslaved, and so being back into that system of criminality in order to get free labor, which kind of speaks to another thing you were talking about when it comes to capitalism. And so I think the unfortunate thing is for many people of color fall victim to the criminal justice system. On that flip side of the coin, capitalism plays a large role in keeping things the way they are. Why it's been so much more resistance to systematical changes in the criminal justice system. I was more encouraged by seeing something like Philadelphia, for example. They just recently just banned all low level traffic stops and citations.
Oh, I did see that.
So involved, if you have a broken tail light, if you have air freshener, in your car, unfortunate tragedy of Dante Wright, also in Minnesota. I think also other low-level offenses that involve minor traffic stops that most officers have commonly made throughout time. I think that's one of those systematic changes that you have to make. And so for me, that's kind of what I focus on when it comes to my issue when it comes to police violence or any other social unrest that involves people of color, is focusing on establishing better policy and legislations, because I think that's a true apology, in my opinion, when it comes to different lawmakers and politicians who, instead of thoughts and prayers, it's like, we can make, these decisions put in place. And I felt, even coming all the way here to meet up for the podcast with you today, I always, flipping through my time feed, and I saw, Biden's quote, his statement on the situation of like, still trusting, as far as that cliche, don't be, violently reacting to the tragedy of Rittenhouse today, and mostly just sticking by, the justice system, whatever kind of, quote that he was making, essentially trying to, keep the peace type of thing. But I think in order for him to keep the peace, I think it's for him to really, at this point, establish more better policy and legislation, not only, keep people safe, because, just unfortunate tragedy involved people going to a protest to protest, unfortunate brutality, and they had to experience, fear of brutality, and many went through that brutality. And definitely my hearts go out to the victims, during that tragedy too, because that was an unfortunate thing I saw about the whole trial that took place from off the start, was the fact that, the prosecutors couldn't refer to people involved, in the Rittenhouse trial as victims, essentially. So I think even that systematically kind of played a death knell into the sentence, unfortunately, because if you can't humanize the people that were involved in the tragedy of why you're in the courtroom in the first place, then what's the point of having the trial?
Exactly. That's very true. I forgot about that whole situation, and I kind of want to fix your camera. You just got the sun and the, it's kind of taking up the whole screen on your, so I just wanted to fix that.
That's not good.
And I kind of want to go back to I had a thought about the Julius Jones case. We're jumping all over the place, but like you said, is with so many trials going all at once, it's hard to just like stay focused on one, because your time feed is kind of just like, and you're kind of trying to read on every single one. But yeah, the governor, like, he brought it down to take him off death row. He brought it to life without parole.
Yes.
Which is unfortunate because he's an innocent man.
Right. Now I think with that, it came with him kind of playing it safe, but at the same time, figuring, I think it's in a way it is unfortunate. I wish he would fully on exonerated, but I think with the unfortunate, that's why I was, me bringing up the criminal justice system, which is unfortunate in a lot of ways. I think even with that, I think that was, even, throughout history, which is in a sad way, is the most happiest thing you can have. I think the fact that, he is going to live to see another day,
true.
behind bars, unfortunately, but at least live to see another day. I think even having that, due process now to really tell his full side of the story, and also having, more testimony of witnesses to, fully, help him be fully exonerated, and also with the newfound DNA evidence. So I think that's also a lost thing. I think the reason why it feels so, excruciating, because everything is all interconnected with all these cases. And then when I bring up, evidence, I think about now the Ahmaud Arbery, which, tough for me even saying like Ahmaud Arbery's name, because he's not the one on trial. It's three people.
That's very
put
true.
On trial. So I think, but I think, with the three names, I think that's also, an unfortunate thing too. When we bring up tragedies, I think, when we bring like even Trayvon Martin, it was George Zimmerman, not Trayvon Martin, that was put on trial. But essentially saying that, I think it puts light on.
I wonder why that's a. Do you think it's easier for people to just make the connection with, I don't know, like why is it always, because it seems to happen a lot where the victim it's the victim's case,
I think the media really also, which everything's so interconnected, plays a role in everything when it comes to even these tragedies and cases. Because I think for folks who may be new to a lot of this stuff, I think I would recommend folks to check out When They See Us if you haven't already done so. That's a prime example what I can bring up when it comes to media's role in the criminal justice system, because it was based on the Central Park Five in the late 80s who were accused of raping someone, of unfortunately accused of gang raping someone in Central Park in New York, and the media completely castrated their character, their sense of who they are as people, saying it's off. Even before then, Trump at the time even buying out a piece of the paper saying how they should get the death penalty, essentially. So I think the media's role immediately, I think the media plays a large role in how they portray, and even wording that plays a large role, because essentially, as you allude to, like, why is the victim, why is their name put in for the trial?
Yeah.
But I think in some weird way, I think I would try to say it a better way of saying lazy, but I think the media does have a bigger role in wording things more in a way that portrays something one way over another. I think having a way of, I think they can definitely do a lot more in the way they portray a lot of cases, and the way they put forth in investigating and putting out a lot of cases. I think, unfortunately, the media is so many different, media outlets. Fortunately, when it comes to that, we bring up capitalism, getting so much competition on, rather than getting the stories down, is mostly who's going to get the story down first. And so with that, leaves out a lot of information, leaves out a lot of, important research, leaves out a lot of important data. It's mostly just, as long as you put the story out there first, you can go back later and, put out the facts, quote unquote. But, by then, so many people, in this day and age are so consumed by so many things, even with social media nowadays. It's like, when you hear the first initial story, it's like, okay, you have this quick 1, 2, 3 mindset of like thinking one way or another. So I think that's what the fortunate tragedy happened, even in the Rittenhouse case, with the way the media was kind of portraying things as they're going about. I think not really, highlighting that fact of, with the victim not being the people involved in tragedy, not being called victims, not really deeply analyzing this thing in the way that it should have. Really, hopefully, it would have reflected a way better outcome.
Yeah. And you did talk about the victims. Do you know their names? We definitely want to say their names.
The victims' names.
Oh, your phone's.
That's all good. Yeah. That's the even unfortunate part too. I think with the whole tragedy with the case is that, unfortunately, we know with this case we're not going to be able to really fully hear their names as their victims.
That's true.
Yeah, because even with that, I think that's why I was saying there was a death knell. The fact that their tragedy, they couldn't be referred to as victims, and you know, it was unfortunate to hear a statement made by one of the victims' mother.
Mm-hmm.
It was a gentleman who had the skateboarding incident trying to fight off, you know, Rittenhouse at the protest, and was unfortunate victim to a gunshot wound. And you know, making that statement of the fact that they, you know, their son couldn't be referred to him as a victim, so totally dehumanizing him, you know, dehumanizing his character and his intentions of being there. You know, initially at the protest was to, you know, initially to honor, initially going back again, the whole reason why, you know, the case started in the first place was because of Jacob Blake. And so I think definitely, you know, my hearts go out to his family, you know, to the victim's family. I think another thing I saw highlighted on my time feed was the fact that, you know, essentially the victims, you know, in this tragedy, you know, mostly was two white males.
Mm-hmm.
And so on that same token, there are definitely a lot of allies who rally and support.
Yeah.
But also, I think there's definitely consequences with that when you bring up, you know, colonization, definitely when it comes to white supremacy. I think even within, you know, definitely a lot of allies, you know, fall victim to a lot of these tragedies.
Yeah, absolutely, you're right, and we need our allies, you know, because they're, like you said, they have their struggles too. We all have our struggles, and we all have our stories. And you spoke about a case in New York. There's also another gentleman in New York that was convicted of stealing a backpack.
Yeah,
Khalif Browder.
Yeah.
And he was innocent, later committed suicide. But that goes to show there's two sides of the system. You know, he was innocent and had to spend time in prison. And, like, did he spend his full sentence, or did he get proven innocent and then...
Well, essentially, he was never given a trial. He was just accused.
That's true.
And unfortunately, before, you know, they even decided to do a trial, he was in solitary confinement 2 out of 3 years. He was in Rikers Island, which is one of the roughest, you know, prisons, you know, in the country, essentially. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, him being 16 at the time, being accused of this thing, unfortunately coming from a less, you know, wealthier background, you know, I think people, you know, forget that too, compared to the Rittenhouse, you know, case. Rittenhouse, you know, essentially had rich conservative donors bailed, you know, spent $2 million to bail him out.
Yeah.
Versus, you know, Khalif Browder, that unfortunately no one knew at the time until the story came out. You know, he had to spend, you know, time in jail because he couldn't afford bail. His family couldn't afford to bail him out. And so, you know, and also the harsh realities of, you know, solitary confinement and the, you know, realities of the conditions of the jail, unfortunately, mentally it was traumatizing and took a mental health toll, and unfortunately took his life. And I think that's also another reflection, you know, just thinking about the recent, you know, Capitol riot, people that were being charged. You know, a lot of, you know, just recently, you know, I think the realtor lady was charged. I think she's gonna spend, supposedly 60 days or less in jail with probation. And even, I think the gentleman that was, you know, I think that was with the bullhorns.
Yeah, the fake.
You know, walking around with the shaman, the QAnon guy. I think he's given 45 months, essentially. So I think that's also another reflection of, you know, the criminal justice system as well as, you know, who can, you know, also affordability too. That's why I think it becomes a big, you know, thing with capitalism, how it ties to, you know, the criminal justice system is this: who can afford bail, who can afford the best lawyer. Because, you know, unfortunately, you know, the victims' families, you know, of a Rittenhouse trial, you know, I'm not sure, you know, I wasn't really too satisfactory of the prosecutor's, you know, job, despite the adversities. I know it was very tough not calling the victims, and also having an unfortunate judge in this in this situation.
Yeah.
So I think for me, that's also a reflection of, you know, the criminal justice system as well. I think also just, you know, dealing with the affordability, you know, of, you know, cash bail, of even with that, you know, what neighborhoods you come from as far as, you know, that spectrum of be able to afford bail, be able to also afford lawyer fees, and also, you know, defense. So I think it's definitely all these cases really intersect, and, you know, in these unfortunate ways, all intersects into these areas where we talk about mass incarceration, you know, who's getting incarcerated, who's frequently getting stopped more than others by the statistics and research, and also just just analyzing a lot of things within the criminal justice system.
Absolutely. And do you know when there'll be a verdict for the 3 gentlemen who killed Ahmaud Arbery?
I believe within a few days. I believe within the next week. I believe it was something about Monday. I could be wrong right now, but definitely within the next few days. I think they're definitely deciding, the jury definitely the jury.
And I think that, the jury of the Kyle Rittenhouse case was like, I think 1 person of color.
Yeah, and that's another reflection too. I think within the criminal justice system is the jury, pool, which I think a lot of people take for granted is the jury selection. I think even though it was strategic, I believe that I think it was something I saw on the time feed, the lady that helped O.J. Simpson get off essentially was in charge of selecting the jury pool for helping select the jury pool for Rittenhouse trial, and I think that's a reflection too of the criminal justice system and manipulative ways of the criminal justice system, which has been so historic and so systematic. Even hearing cases of people of color during the Jim Crow era, doing a lot of different unfortunate errors that many people of color were traumatized and had to go through, involving the criminal justice system, having that biased jury, having that jury that immediately found you guilty. You didn't spend less than 10 minutes deliberating, just immediately saw your color of your skin and found you guilty. And so I think it's an unfortunate reflection of that, so systematically over time. And I think also, me tying in the media, the role of media, how that plays into how, people of color have been systematically portrayed, compared to their white counterparts, especially when it comes to crimes being committed and the wording of each crime. I think that reflects also the jury pool too, because even though the criminal justice system, spends its time, deliberating on the jury pool selection, by the time most stuff about the trial gets out, whether, that person didn't hear about it or not, they're going to eventually hear about it. And so that ties in also, the ways things go down, with these cases.
Yeah, I had a thought the other day, why are our neighborhoods patrolled the most? But in situations where we need help, like a situation of missing murdered Indigenous women, or a situation where a person is actually innocent and they go to prison and are on death row, why isn't the police work actually done in these situations? And it's done when it's time to arrest us. Why is riot gear brought in and stuff like that when it's time to bust a local, drug house, but not when we ask for help to find women or to find somebody innocent,
And that's definitely a deep systematic problem too. Definitely with prisons and the prison industrial complex is more profit and more economic means to that. But I think also that's a bigger thing when it comes to capitalism is, why is police more funded and not the communities essentially. Yeah. I think even with that, I saw something. Jamel Hill, she's a sports analyst, but she does a lot of political.
She's very outspoken.
And she spoke out about the recent Young Dolph tragedy that happened. He was a hip hop artist in Memphis that was, tragically gunned down recently. And people were looking at how, it's a senseless violence and needs to stop. And she not appreciated her outlook of, acknowledging the tragedy, but also analyzing it from a deep, systematic point of view, looking at the way things are economically and systematically are in Memphis, how it's, I think, one of the lowest ranked in education. Definitely resources aren't there compared to other, regions, of the state. And so I think definitely, looking at that, why is, we look at it from a deeper point of view of the criminal justice system, why is crime, even committed, and systematically and historically has been proven that it comes to, unfortunate, levels of poverty. People have that, level, and especially in this capitalistic day and age where you need to pay your rent. There's so many things that you need to pay for in order to survive, and so that sense of criminality, unfortunately, plays an ugly role sometimes, even in unfortunate tragedies as a young Dolph. Unfortunately, it comes with a lot of envy. It comes with a lot of fortunate human envy of seeing someone, that's making it economically and someone that's not making it economically, and so. Unfortunately, definitely poverty plays a large role, and definitely a lot of unfortunate things play a large role in systematically why are our neighborhoods not fully on supportive when it comes to economically stabilizing and also finding, human resources as well when it comes to dealing with mental health and other, human side effects of issues that, humans, typically go through.
Yeah. Hello everyone, I just wanted to thank you guys for joining us on Burn the Wagon, where we're here to verbally burn the wagon that is capitalism, patriarchy, and colonialism. I'm having the homie Thairie here today. We're talking about the 3 major cases going on in our country. And next we kind of want to move into, Thairie has mentioned mental health a couple times, and that ties into our next conversation, and that's the unhoused population in our communities, are in mostly downtown Santa Cruz. And last week or a couple days ago, some of the homies were in Pajaro Valley and they got arrested doing a distribution, or they were doing a sweep, and a bunch of people got arrested trying to help people move out, I think. I'm not fully sure on the full story, but yeah, so that's something that has happened recently. So they're still sweeping people out and giving them nowhere to go, and giving them no resources or anything to even find places to go, so.
Yes, I mean, it's unfortunate right now, even with the ordinances, it's happening widespread across the state, other than the county at large, just across the state. Even if you analyzing at a local level, I think I'm seeing unfortunate things go down, like the OVO ordinance, the outdoor vehicle ordinance, the CSSO, the camping services standard ordinance. So mostly just seeing this criminality, again, the criminality aspect of, criminalizing the most vulnerable population, which is the unhoused, in my view, contrary to city council view. It's definitely unfortunate. That's also ties to a lot of the capitalistic ways of the criminal justice system. Unfortunately, is finding ways to make money, even though a lot of things are being reformed right now. Mm-hmm. So at the same time, I think it's a lot of resistance to those who are making money off the prison industrial complex. It's like, even though this sense of mass incarceration, this campaign of of tackling mass incarceration is dying the prison population down, is how can there still be money be made, which is unfortunate for you looking at the criminal justice system right now. So I think that's another way, unfortunately, which is not really a great way to handle things when it comes to dealing with the unhoused population. I think with that is also a reflection of the state and the county right now when it comes to economic means. I think it's, not having enough resources, not having enough solutions, but also it's that resistance problem of how we're going to get the money, where's the money going to come from. And so I think it's also a lot of resistance from the current systems that are put in place, current institutions who are making money. So it's like different police departments, they don't want to defund themselves to help, some homeless person, that's sleeping out in front of their establishments, or in front of, around their neighborhoods, essentially. So I think with that, it's unfortunate. Even ordinances like that, I think it's just a reflection of more the criminal justice system, because even with that, when someone's more criminalized, it's hard for them to really make it, systematic, stability wise when it comes to housing or employment, because they're often discriminated, even though we're trying to reform ways in place to not criminalize those who have previous criminal records, but they're still stigmatized and still judged, by their peers and by society at large, which is the unfortunate thing too about the criminal justice system, and also the role of media. I think when someone's, labeled, essentially as a criminal, immediately there's nothing, set aside for that person, even though in my view someone commits something, super heinous, as a human being, that is cause to judgment. I do word to understand, but someone that made a low level offense or something like a cannabis offense or a low level misdemeanor, type offense, and trying to restabilize themselves back into society. And so I imagine someone that's homeless, example, that's, having a low level misdemeanor like offense of being, criminalized or being fined, by the police of, essentially just sleeping or being outdoors, and then trying to, on the flip side coin, trying to find employment, but trying to find ways to, economically restabilize themselves, but have this asterisk next to their name because of the ordinances that have been put in place. Is definitely, concerning. Definitely concerning.
And that's the thing. They say, like, you know, you're supposed to do your time, you know, you're supposed to be rehabilitated, but then when you get out, it's impossible for that person to show that they're rehabilitated. You know, it's like you said, it's impossible for them to get back into society and to get on their feet. I really feel for those people, especially because it's getting cold again down there. And if they keep getting, like, it just sucks because they keep getting swept and they keep getting moved. How are they? And then the COVID's still going on. You know, it's not like it's over. The mask mandate, I think, just got put back in for indoors.
Yeah, starting this Sunday. Yeah.
So it's still here. So, and then, you know, like, they're not able to go to some homeless shelters. Aren't taking any more people. Some warming centers aren't taking people that aren't vaccinated, or I don't know the exact, you know, like, rules, but there's things that, like, people don't have the resources and can't go get the stuff they need in this situation.
Right, and that's my frustration too. A lot of, you know, county and city leaders locally is that when they put these ordinances in place, they're like, oh, well, we have alternatives and help and blah blah blah. But it's like you said, there's very limited resources, very, you know, lack of access to those, you know, resources, and lack of, you know, transportation, and lack of, you know, resources to get you to those places. I remember it was a lady that I think I brought up, you know, one of our last programs, so I brought it up sometime with a friend, that it was this lady that came to me while I was at work, and she was trying to get to the county building, you know, over on Water Street, and, you know, trying to apply for funds, you know, welfare and other, you know, needed, you know, resources and funds. And she was, you know, as far as, you know, unfortunately handicapped, had a walker, was an older lady with a walker, and, you know, she was struggling. She was like, you know, I don't have, you know, access to get to there on time. And by the time I catch, you know, the bus, for example, you know, and then by the time I get over there, you know, the place is going to be closed, the building's going to be closed. So shutting down the opportunity of getting that access, getting that resource, or getting that help, you know, essentially that you may need, that community help. And so it's definitely unfortunate, you know, definitely seeing where are the funds to supply more of these resources. And I think that comes with a lot of resistance too, looking at the economic needs of people that are housed, looking at, you know, resources like affordable housing, for example, and shunning, you know, upon it of that it's going to lower property value, it's going to bring a different criminality or a different element to the neighborhood, and it's definitely unfortunate.
And I've been seeing this empty house thing.
Oh, the empty house tax.
Yeah. Go around. Does that have anything to do with this situation, or?
Yes, I believe basically the purpose behind the empty house tax is to help. Would be to more economically help and support the funds of more affordable housing, or to give the opportunity to have funds to fund more affordable housing. And essentially it's basically going to tax a lot of these property owners who have homes that are just sitting empty, or a lot of these, you know, properties sitting around town that, you know, has, you know, most of them are vacation.
It's a second or third home for people.
Second or third home for folks, or they rent it out briefly, or they use it as a vacation home briefly. And essentially, instead of it sitting empty, the housing market is definitely, you know, suffering right now. You got a lot of people looking for rent. And unfortunately, during COVID right now as well, doing, you know, evictions and people trying to find stable housing. And also people that are unhoused trying to, you know, eventually get into housing. Definitely the housing market, seeing all these empty homes and it not being served or not being, you know, helping the community is definitely the purpose, the need for, you know, empty home tax. Definitely taxing those who aren't using it to where it needs to be to help out community members be housed and become residents to economically stabilize themselves. I think it's definitely important. Also, the purpose of using those funds to help fund more affordable housing, I think that's definitely important. And I think definitely also is the important conversation of why is it important to have affordable housing, because I think that's also a conversation that needs to be had, I think, amongst community members as well. I think because it's been such a taboo, a stigmatized taboo on affordable housing, or those who does receive those affordable housing benefits. There's always that stigmatization or a criminality element that's hidden and doesn't really get talked about as much. I think that's why a lot of the issues of affordable housing gets shunned upon. by a lot of community members, especially in our county. By and large, is really shunned upon. So is that not in my backyard rhetoric I constantly hear? So I think until we have more of that conversation of affordable housing and why is it important, how is it benefiting community members, I think it's definitely important to really have that talk as well.
Yeah, and if we want to, as a city of Santa Cruz, if we want to keep accommodating as many tourists as we do a year, we gotta think about the working class that that's here, because we keep building really expensive hotels, we keep building expensive living situations, but a person doesn't get paid enough to live in any of those situations.
Right. And the people who would end up working in those hotels or working in these lavish, 5-star restaurants or these businesses, many of them, like you say, are the local working class. And a lot of these establishments that are luxury being built, they're not paying the workers nearly as much as they should to really live. And so it's a lot of my friends who I know and, talk to closely. A lot of them are working 6 days out of the week. A lot of them are working almost every day. A lot of them working 2 to 3 jobs or working full time, but also still have a side hustle, when it comes to doing what they need to do to keep the bills paid on time. And so I think even with that, that's a larger conversation to have too, is it these decisions that we're making is eventually affecting the working class, because if that working class member can't pay their rent on time or unfortunately have to move out because they couldn't keep up with their bills, they're going to end up in that unhoused situation. And with that, they have to deal with the backlash and the consequences of the ordinance that was passed by those same city leaders who viewed them once as constituents, but now that in their unhoused situation, they look down upon them, and so that's the unfortunate thing.
Yeah, and like you said, when those hotels don't want to pay certain people the right amount of money, then it gives opportunities to our undocumented folks, but also they're not getting paid, so they're having to work 2 to 3 jobs, and they're working themselves to the bone, and they're most likely not able to get health insurance from these jobs, so they're obviously they want to come over here for a better life, but they didn't come over here for a better life of working 2 to 3 jobs.
Right. And that's the taboo element people don't really touch upon too, is holding a lot of institutions and establishments who are the employers more accountable when it comes to wages and employment, because that is an unfortunate conversation to have, is why is it easier to hire someone who is undocumented and can pay them and exploit them, rather than someone who is a citizen but refuse to pay them more than the minimum wage really the bare minimum that the bare minimum wage requires. I think it's definitely another taboo conversation to have, because I've worked with a lot of the people who were undocumented in the past, and understanding that just like any other human being, they're here to live and stabilize themselves and look out for their families and loved ones and provide. And so I think it's just a reflection on those institutions who refuse to pay those wages or refuse to pay those benefits. And it's really a reflection right now in the country. We're seeing a lot of strikes that have been taking place, places like John Deere, Kellogg's, factories, and many other places around the world, who a lot of workplaces are, people are walking off the job. I think even our county Santa Cruz County workers, I think they represent a 5-2 county, I think 521. I forgot that. I'm trying to remember how to phrase their union.
If anybody in there knows, let us know.
Yes, but definitely Santa Cruz County workers are currently on strike for better wages and better benefits and better benefits. Definitely when it comes to them as workers. Also that's another thing too, of people that were deemed essential last year during the pandemic, and now that we're slowly trying to get out of the post-pandemic, people that were considered once essential last year, when it comes to now trying to come to the negotiating table for better wages and better benefits and better stability to survive this post-traumatic pandemic, is kind of like shunned upon once again, as far as everything's back to normal.
Yeah.
You don't need instead of you essential now, so need to give you better wages or better benefits.
Which is crazy to think about. That's such a crazy concept. I wasn't really thinking about that. Last year you guys are just we need you for everything. We need you to feed us. Obviously It's a good point.
Yeah, and a lot of immigrant workers suffer too.
Absolutely.
Definitely when it comes to like the high demand of folks who are indoors and ordering, as simple as ordering your groceries at home while you're locked at home, complaining that you can't get a breath of fresh air. But it's like people that are working essentially during the pandemic, risking, their health, essentially to provide for their families.
And we had a lot of fires that they worked through. They worked through a pandemic. They worked through the fires. We didn't have them. I mean, it was storming and rainy, but they worked through whatever that to provide for us. So we definitely have to. Whenever you're eating your salad at your restaurant, since we're able to go back out and eat. Whenever you're at the grocery store, looking at your veggies in the produce aisle, please remember the farm workers and the people that helped you get those foods. It's definitely a necessary thing to think about them because they're out there working 10 hours a day, bent over, almost backwards, to pick that stuff, and they're out there hustling, so definitely think about them. Is there any other topics that you wanted to kind of bring up?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some more. No, it's not really more I can really think of.
If anybody in here has any questions or any comments, definitely let us know. You're with Burn the Wagon. Here to verbally burn the wagon that is capitalism, colonialism, and patriarchy. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's another thing too when you bring up patriarchy. Thank you for reminding me. I think that's also what we were touching on a little bit earlier, the white male complex of when it comes to the criminal justice system and other, economic needs. I think that's also another conversation I think community members need to have, I think, moving forward when we look at a Rittenhouse trial or looking at a lot of these tragedies that's been unfortunately taking place.
Yeah. I definitely want to have conversations with some more, since destroying that patriarchy, I definitely want to have more conversations with some more women and some more two-spirits. So anybody that wants to have a conversation and talk about patriarchy, so I definitely want to learn more. So definitely want to uplift our women and our two spirits because they're definitely forgotten about a lot.
Especially since we were able to attend Faith's march to Faith Brown's march that took place. Definitely if you haven't seen it, definitely there's coverage that you posted with Kaon.
Yeah.
And also Lookout Santa Cruz, which published a great article on the march and the purpose of the protest, which involves, addressing missing women and addressing, that hierarchy of really elevating voices of missing women.
Yes, definitely need to elevate those voices and elevate those names for sure. So if you're out there right now, please look up this name today, and that's Nicole Smith. Today is the day she was murdered on November 19th, 2018. She was killed at 5 a.m. by a drive-by shooting. She has not gotten justice for her murder, and her family is really seeking justice for this murder, just as any other family is. So yeah, just please look up her story and please just think about her today and say her name once today. And if you have it, burn some sage for her and put some prayers up for any other missing and murdered women, two spirits out there, anybody out there that has been missing and murdered by anybody. So yeah, thank you for joining us on Burn the Wagon.